Hello, and welcome back to the Own Your Becoming podcast. Today I'm joined by Juliette Miremont Morton, a feminine leadership coach, certified functional medicine and mastery method coach, and the founder of Awaken Health. After her own midlife reckoning with burnout and hormonal shifts, Juliette created the Meta Reset program to help executive women reclaim energy, restore balance, and step into menopause as a powerful initiation into authenticity and feminine leadership. Juliette, thank you for being here. I'm very excited.
Thank you, Wendy. It's nice to see you.
So, you say that menopause isn't a decline, but an initiation. Can you define that for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of menopause is having a bit of a comeback in the media, in social media. I mean, a comeback. It's never gone anywhere, but we're starting to talk about it, which is amazing. I do find that a little bit of the narrative, though, is about around symptoms and things that are going mainly downhill, downhill energy, downhill libido, downhill body composition, etc. And that's not at all the way I see it. I see it more as an opportunity for recalibration, an opportunity to really look at those things that maybe aren't working for you truly, the way you eat, the way you move, the thoughts you have, and to take it really as an invitation versus as something that we want to resist because that is really not going to be a very fun road if we're resisting it. Yeah.
So, before we dive in further into metabolism and stress and safety and nutrition, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like your own journey and how you decided to get into this line of work?
Sure. Yeah. So my initial background was more business. I think we have that in common. And I was a tech entrepreneur as well. I worked in startups. I worked in corporate, kind of all over the place. Always with an interest in really in health. And around, so I'm 50, going to be turn 51 next month. So probably around 45, I started feeling a shift really, and that just happened to coincide with those COVID era years, those COVID years where just with the anxiety all around. And that really kind of sparked something in me, really changed something in me where I felt like, okay, I felt completely unprepared for what was ahead from a physical standpoint, from an emotional resilience standpoint, from a, life event standpoint. And I really started to look inwards. And at that point, I also realized that my health was kind of going downhill and I'm a health coach, so I'm doing all the right things. I'm definitely eating right, or so I thought, or moving right, etc. But still I was seeing these changes and I was just not feeling like myself anymore. And so I really decided to go full throttle into health coaching and functional medicine health coaching because I discovered really that going to the root cause is really the answer versus just looking at the symptoms. So functional medicine really sees medicine as a tree, and the body, sorry, as a tree, with the leaves being the symptoms, and then the roots really being those lifestyle factors. And that really appealed to me as an analogy and understanding. And the more I got into it, the more it made complete sense. But also, the more I got into it, the more I realized the health coaching, the coaching aspect is really powerful because habit change, as we know, is one of the most difficult things to do as human beings. And I don't think we need more experts. I think we have enough information. The information is out there. It's really at your fingertips, even more now than 3 years
Yeah.
ago. It's really about, yeah, it's really about working through how to shift our behaviors, but really understanding more than that, what's been driving them the whole time. So that's really my focus. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of us think that, as we age, oh, it's just my metabolism slowing down with age, but you call that a myth. So can you explain a little what's really happening?
Yeah, that is a kind of a myth. It is actually a myth. I have a study that I share with my, with my clients. And so, yes, metabolism does decline a little bit with age, from your sort of 30s, 20s on. But it's really, even then, it's just like 1% a year or something like that. I don't have the exact data under my eyes, but that's not really what's going on. Like what's driving those changes is more like body composition, right? So as we lose muscle mass and gain more fat with those hormonal changes, our metabolism is going to be different. And that's going to also lead to a whole host of issues, not just the slowing of the metabolism. So it's not a fatality. It's really about working on that body composition and working with your hormones at that age. Yeah.
And when you say working with the body composition, do you mean specifically around food or also the way you move?
Yeah, so obviously it's going to be everything, but it's going to be food, the way you move, it's going to be your stress levels, etc. Because if you stay steady, right? And this is kind of what happened to me, where pretty healthy, I'm okay. I was a little bit I wasn't underweight, but I wasn't really overweight either. But if I stayed at the steady state, like when you hit sort of your, depending on the women, right, their 40s or perimenopause, and you're having the hormonal shifts, you're not going to react the same way to, like for example, sugar in your food. So your blood sugar, even though we have an advantage as women compared to men earlier, once we hit those ages, our advantage goes downhill, and we become more insulin resistant, for example. And so that means food, right? So of course, watching your sugars and the way kind of to flatten your line, your sugar line during the day. We can talk about what that means and what that looks like, but also doing, making sure that you're working out so that you have the muscle composition as well to absorb that. So that's just in the blood sugar area, but other areas to do with more cortisol and stress. Cortisol is our stress hormone, as you know. And if we don't manage our stress, or if we live in a very heightened stress state for a long period of time, again, that's also going to lead to dysregulation, which is going to have an impact on your body. But the fact is, all of our hormones are linked.
Mhm.
Actually, which is kind of, it's sort of good news, and also, oh, okay, now I get it, right? And we can talk about this a little bit. And so, the good news is that there's some really like big levers that are at the bottom of our hormone pyramid: cortisol, insulin. And so working with those, we're going to get effects on our thyroid hormones, which also have an effect on metabolism, and on our progesterone, our estrogen, or like more of our sex hormones. But we can get into that in more detail.
You mentioned just now that you were a health coach, but then you started feeling not so well, like not like yourself anymore, and then you really dived into this. Can you give us an example of what we think is healthy, but it actually isn't, especially for women in perimenopause?
Yeah, sure. So, there are a lot, first of all, let's talk about nutrition. Like there are a lot of diet, fads, or not even fads, like just this different way of seeing things, right? And so I was somebody who was leaning more towards keto or paleo. Like I was somebody who was really restricting carbs for a long, long time. I actually, was on the Atkins diet in the 90s, if that means anything to you,
Yeah.
to your audience. So carbs, was one thing. And then I started fasting as well, and working with that. And then I realized, well, sometimes restricting carbs felt okay and fasting felt okay. And sometimes it really did not make me feel good at all. And then I realized, well, you can't, as a woman, like with a cycle, like there's a cyclicality to it. And there's an interesting book, Fasting Like a Girl, by Mindy Pelt, where she really goes into it and explains that in the different periods of your cycle, you need different things. And so while restricting carbs, it potentially in the first phase of your cycle, when it's more sort of higher in estrogen, might be really effective. In fact, that's a really good time to fast. As you get closer to your period, and then that second phase, you're going to need more nourishment. And when we're talking about carbs, like I'm never talking about simple white. Yeah, like I'm never, sugar, white flour. Like I'm not even, that's really not on the table. But I'm talking about more complex, yeah, complex carbs, and so there's a time for that your body needs them more, et cetera. And you can burn out and you can crash out if you're kind of restricting all the time. I'd say the second really biggest misconception is around exercise.
Mhm.
And a lot of women are, maybe exercising early in the morning, for example, and which is fine. And if you're feel fine during the day, right? But if you're somebody who's already, it's pretty, like runs pretty like on more adrenaline during the day, and you're quite stressed in general, you might end up really burning out again, because stress. God, exercise causes stress. It's good stress. That's why we do it. It's hermetic stress. However, it is stress. And so you have to recover from it. And so you're raising your cortisol. And again, for most of us and for most women I see, the issue is more that they're too often in stress mode. Like the stress response is not turned off. So they
Mhm.
don't need to go do a HIIT exercise or an early morning workout. Actually, they need to slow it down, go outside for a nice nature walk, be outside, have their eyes in the sun, etc., but not hit that workout early in the morning and potentially doing it later. Not to say not to exercise, but there's a time to do it. Yeah.
So it sounds like timing now is what it's the key here. It's not just about, oh, because we need, because our insulin is more sensitive now and we want to keep the blood sugar in check. So it's not just about cutting the carbs all the time. It's about knowing when to cut the carbs and when you need to nourish yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not only carbs that raise your blood sugar. Like, it's also, for the most part, it's also cortisol and stress. And yeah, you're right to talk about timing, because there is a sort of cyclicality to it during the day, right? So, a circadian rhythm. And in a really well functioning circadian rhythm, you wake up in the morning, your cortisol rises in the morning. So, to allow you to get out of bed, that's a completely normal thing. Allows you to get out of bed, and it kind of rises up until midday, and then it starts slowly declining by mid-afternoon as your melatonin kind of comes up, and then you're getting ready
Mhm.
for bed. And for many of us, what ends up happening is that cortisol spikes up in the morning, whether it's
Mhm.
because we're having coffee first thing, we're just jumping out of bed, we're stressed about our emails, we're going for that workout, we're taking that cold shower, whatever it is like making that cortisol spike up a little too fast, a little too much, which what then happens is that in the afternoon, instead of going slowly down, you hit that 3 p.m. crash, burned out. You're just like, that's when you just can't stay awake, or you have to go lie down or something like that. And then often we then goes back up right before bed. And all of a sudden we're like, oh my God, I was exhausted all day. And now I'm wired and tired and I can't go to bed because I have that little cortisol spike. And so that's quite common. And that's as you say, the timing, like just respecting our daily cycle is super important. And there are many things we can do to support that.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the blood sugar spikes doesn't just come from eating carbs, but it
Yeah.
also comes from stress. Can you explain a little to our audience? How does that create blood sugar spikes?
Yeah. So yeah, there are other reasons why our blood sugar can spike, but yeah. So let's talk about stress. So think about what the stress response originally is for your body, right? So the stress response is literally a lion. You spot a lion and you got to run, right? So your body is going to give you as much energy as possible to run. And that means spiking your blood sugar. So that's kind of the physiological reason, right? Technically, we store we slow glycogen. One of the areas is in our liver, and so that's usually what is the fastest to, if you don't have any available in your body, that's the fastest to be produced. Yeah, and so that's really one of the reasons. And I mean, one of the things I did when I was getting back into shape was wear a blood sugar, like a continuous blood sugar monitor, a CGM. And I don't know if you've done that before. It was eye-opening. It was
Yes.
eye-opening.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I realized, for me, because I'm not somebody who eats a lot of sugar, I don't want to just focus on carbs, but I'm careful. I've read The Glucose Goddess, if you know
Right.
that.
Right.
I don't want to
Yeah.
time it, etc. But yet my blood sugar was sometimes, yeah, would rise during the day, and 100% linked to stress, 100% linked to sleep as well. Because when you don't sleep very well, the next morning your blood sugar is all over the place. And I think we know this. Like, when we don't sleep well, we kind of crave carbs. We just feel a little bit off, maybe even nauseated a little bit in the morning or something like that when we really haven't had a good sleep. So sleep is also incredibly important in terms of blood sugar. Yeah.
Why is it important to pay attention to blood sugar spikes? And how can someone know, without measuring with a CGM, how can someone know from just what they experience throughout the day that they're having a lot of blood sugar spikes?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because when I started getting into this, they kept talking about blood sugar spike. It's like, what do we care? Like, I was, I get that. Apart, okay, I understand for weight, but I was like, I don't
Right.
really understand why I care. So yes, of course, one is weight. Because as soon as, our body's really sensitive to the blood sugar, our blood sugar. And so we have a super sophisticated system to lower the blood sugar as soon as it rises. There are like 3 different places it can go, or insulin spikes, and it literally puts it where it can. So whether that's the liver, whether that's your muscles if you worked out, or whether that's your fat if there's no other place to put it. But why do we care? A couple things. One is, like, in terms of our energy levels, like, we will notice that whatever goes up has to go down, right? And, we know that. And so that's one thing, is like, if you want steady energy during the day and just feel good, these ups and downs, then that, having a more steady blood sugar line, and it's never gonna be flat, because when you eat, it's completely normal that it goes up and then it goes back down. Um, so the energy, so you will feel it in terms of energy. And but the other thing really is that actually blood sugar, think about it as like kind of like rust and so it really oxidizes, and it's stressful. Basically, it's stressful for your body, and it could also lead to cortisol going up as well. For example, if you're somebody who's waking up at night, kind of like, I just, for what you don't even know why you're just waking up at night, and that might just be like like adrenaline waking you up because your blood sugar just went down. And
Mm,
a lot of us actually go into hypo during the night. But the only reason we go into hypo is because we've had these fluctuations all day.
right.
Right.
Okay.
And then, of course, then we'll talk about cravings and eating, getting off your meal plan. Like, you might be eating very healthy, and then all of a sudden, like, there's the bag of potato chips, or there's the cookies, or whatever, you have a craving. But again, if you ask somebody, like, okay, you had a craving, tell me about your day. Tell me about your day. And usually what I hear is, well, I ran out of bed, I had a meeting, I skipped lunch, I was super stressed, I
Yeah.
ate a muffin,
Yeah.
at 11 a.m. Or usually that craving comes from something being dysregulated, either, during the day. And so if you're trying to stay healthy and eat healthy, it's going to be in your favor to have the stable blood sugar as well. Yeah.
Okay, so just to recap that, some of the signs that you have blood sugar spikes is cravings, waking
Hmm.
up at night, and energy crashes during the day.
Yep.
So those are
Absolutely.
like signs that you should maybe start paying attention to your blood sugar, either through what you eat and your stress level management.
Exactly, right? And then another way is to be looking at your body composition, right? And so if you're seeing that, and this happens to women as they hit midlife and, starting to be in perimenopause and later, if you start having accumulation of fat, like around your midline mainly, not so much we always focus on fat on our hips, or that's actually not really that interesting in terms of health, right? But it's more an aesthetic thing. But in terms of like your midline, if you are starting to accumulate fat there, then that signals your so what we call metabolic health, which is a little bit wider than just blood sugar. And metabolic health really just means it's inputs and outputs, right? So you're eating certain things, you have light, you have air, oxygen, you have food, nutrients to your cells, and then your cells are producing energy. And if you're in really good metabolic health, all that process is working great. You produce a lot of energy and there's very little waste. However, when you're in less good metabolic health, what starts happening is that, you're eating these things, you're not producing enough energy. So energy is the other side, right? So if you're seeing a little bit of weight gain and your energy is kind of dipping, it's signaling like, oh, okay, my cells are not functioning as well as they could. And one of those components for sure is your sensitivity to insulin and your blood sugar. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You say that the body won't release weight if it doesn't feel safe. Can you define what safety looks like and how can women start, moving out of their constant stress mode?
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah. And so, first of all, physiologically, right? We talked about what is the stress response. We forget, because for us, stress is almost like a virtual, I heard the expression of paper tiger and the virtual stress, right? Emails, traffic, relationships, etc. Really, what the stress response is, there is a threat, like a physical threat in the outside world, and you need to do something about it. And that means that you need to run. And that means that you're not going to digest because that's not useful. You're not going to reproduce because that's not useful. A lot of things are not going to, and you're not going to detox, right? And you're not going to need to go to the bathroom, etc. It's that really that's what the stress response is.
How do we bring it to safety? Yeah, how do we move out of that stress mode? So, things are happening, you got to get your kids to school. This is happening at work. The external circumstances won't change.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what, so just understanding what that stress response is helpful to see that, because, our nervous system is either in stress mode or in rest mode, like rest and digest or stress mode. So what I just described, the lion, that's stress mode. What we want is to be spend a part of our day in rest and digest mode, and so that we can digest properly, we can think properly, etc. So your question is, okay, well, how do we do it? So I think the first thing is awareness. Like, the first thing is to realize that, to have a sense of where you are in sort of the stress ladder, right? Like, where your nervous system is. Are you regulated? Like, do you feel calm, grounded? Can do you have clarity? Like, are you open-hearted? Like, okay, that would be a sign that you're in that rest and digest, parasympathetic mode. Or are you just kind of super agitated? And I think a lot of us live in that agitated, like, okay, kids and da 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 and da da da, that it's like it's our new normal. We don't even
Mm,
know that we're in it. And
yeah.
so it's very hard to tell somebody, and I have this all the time. It happened to me yesterday, today. I was talking about cravings and how they are related to stress. And the woman's like, "Oh no, I'm not stressed at all. I'm not stressed at all. Like, apart
Yeah,
from the political situation and da 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 and da da da." I'm like, yeah, it's really hard when you're in it to
right.
see it. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think awareness, and anything you can do to slow things down in terms of, just being more mindful, to start recognizing what it feels like to be in stress and what it feels like to be rest and digest. And then there are many things that you can do. Take breath, for example. Within 30 seconds, you can change and switch your nervous system. Like, there are a couple breaths that you can take, whether it's like the one that I really like and I recommend, because it's so easy and it's so fast. It's the physiological sigh, right? And so it's that in, like, and then a little bit more, and then just a couple of those, and it's like, okay.
It's like a
Have to
physical
remember to
hack.
breathe. What's that?
It's like a physical hack.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It takes a few seconds, and switching your state, and then making some of those. That gives you the space to potentially start thinking and having an intention to making some of those other changes that are really going to, have more of a profound impact on how you spend most of your day. Yeah.
Yeah, I can really relate to being starting to be aware of it, because I also, I used to say I'm never stressed. But then I realized I ran on stress and I liked
Mm,
it, and it was very hard, because for me, stress is like, oh, you're afraid of something, you have a deadline. Like, there's some stresses are clear stressors. And then other things like, I love to push, I'll push harder, I'll push through work, and then I'm going to push at the gym. And it was always pushing, pushing. And this idea of like wanting to be better, stronger, faster. But that creates a stress in the system, which I wasn't really aware of. And I guess in your 20s, 30s, you kind of recoup from it, and you don't really see the cost that it has on you. And it was really until my late 30s where I felt like I'm done. I don't want to push anymore. Like, there's this kind of like tired, overall nervous system tired feeling of I want to slow down. I want to do I remember at the time I planned on doing qigong when I was 65. I was like, okay, my retirement plan, like at 65 I'm
I
gonna do
don't have
qigong.
time.
Now I'm gonna do weight training. And then around late 30s, I discovered qigong. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try it out, because it was a trainer who went to train with a master for like 4 years. He came back and I was like, oh, I always liked this trainer. So, that kind of helped me bridged into qigong in my 30s. And I've been sticking with it until now, because that is the one practice that I have that slows me down. Whether it's more breathing, more slow breathing, more embodiment, more intentionality, feeling into the body what's happening. And I think like that is something that is really missing in our practices. And especially important for women going through midlife to start just slowing down and tuning into what is actually happening and how are they actually feeling.
Yeah, I love that you shared that because you're right. Our stress is addictive.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Especially with the lens of like faster is better, stronger is better. And then
Yeah.
so this idea of just pushing, pushing. And if you're slowing down, nobody wants to slow down. That's not something we
Mm,
praise.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're addicted to the feeling of the
Yeah.
stress hormones.
Yeah.
And, for a lot of us, that feels safer, more comfortable than slowing down because it's familiar. And so your brain
Yeah.
thinks that what's familiar is safe, right?
Right.
And I
Right.
literally spoke to a woman yesterday, and she were talking about procrastination and around her just pushing these difficult tasks out of the way. And she said, I can't figure out why I do that. And I asked her, well, what do you fear would happen if you did do them on time? And she said, well, you know what? That I would no longer be stressed. And I don't know what that feels like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
exactly, that's exactly, what she said, and slowing down to be able to realize, what am I doing? And you're right, in your 20s, 30, early 30s, overriding, no problem, tons of reserves, etc. Right? As you move to 30s, 40s, and that's where, I like to look at symptoms and say, what are these symptoms trying to tell me? What is this headache trying to tell me? What is this crash trying to tell me? Because if your body could speak to you, how would it do it? Like, how would it do it? Like, it can't use words. So that's the only way your body has to tell you, you know what, Wendy, slow down.
Right. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you share a story, maybe your own or a client story that shows how quickly things can change once stress, food, and metabolism are aligned?
Hmm. Very quickly. It's incredible. It's very quickly. It takes years. It's like years to not to be unhealthy, but we have this idea that being healthy is hard. Somehow, it's a bit of a paradigm like, oh, being healthy is hard and you have to do all these things and you have to be so disciplined and all that. It's like, yeah, it's like the reality is that our body is made to be healthy, right? It's made to be healthy. Your cells always want to revert back to health. So it's about giving it the right inputs and outputs, like a plant, right? If you don't put the plant out, if you don't give it water and you don't put it on, to the light, it's not going to do very well. But once you stick your plant out and you put water and light, like within a day already, God, it looks so much better, right? And so by feeding our cell, like feeding literally our mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of our cell, the right nutrients and right inputs, you can make a change in, I see this in my reset program, 2, 3 weeks, like, to really have a change. People say, you wouldn't believe, it's like, oh, not only do I have more energy, I feel better, but this pain that I had in my back or this pain that I had in my knee, it's gone. Like I don't even have it anymore. Um, and these cravings that I had, I don't have them anymore. It's really fast. Like is as once you start putting at the right inputs, like again, like your body wants to be healthy, and then it becomes easier on a behavior point from a behavior point of view because it's like, oh, hold on, I'm not doing this to restrict myself or to punish
Hmm.
myself. I'm doing this because it feels good. It
Hmm.
feels good, and the secret is that, with this, for example, this metabolic reset that I do, it's a 10-week program. So women are like, "Oh, I can do 10 weeks of restriction. I can do it," right? I know that by the end of the 10 weeks, they're not gonna wanna go back to their old lifestyle. They won't want to because they feel so good. It's like they're gonna have that going from that extrinsic motivation to that intrinsic motivation,
Right.
and that's why it becomes a lifestyle. So it's, they all say the same thing, "Oh, I can do this for 10 weeks." I'm like, I don't tell them the maintenance phase and the lifestyle phase, they're really similar. It's not very different. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go into a few questions. Like, what are some simple shifts that one can make given the following like symptoms. So if this is someone with like some weight gain, extra 10 pounds and nothing's really changed in their life, they're training the same way, they're eating healthy, what can they shift? And what can they look into?
Right. So again, if that person is sort of starting to see some hormonal shifts, so probably that weight gain giving the steady state is because of those hormonal shifts that we talked about. So they have to adapt accordingly, meaning the loss of muscle mass. So doing that strength training and adapting their nutrition to do the things that we just talked about, which is like focusing on super nutrient dense nutrition and cutting out the extra and cutting yeah and really focusing on I don't want to give sort of broad diet advice, but it's not so much about like the macronutrients. We talk about like carbs, is it proteins, is it fat, and which one. It's like no matter the name of the diet, like your cells need nutrients. So anything that looks like a nutrient to you, they're pretty easy to spot, so healthy, so greens and a lot of like different colors and anything that's not processed and anything that's from a package and that has a list of ingredients already taking out the processed stuff would really make a huge difference. Yeah.
Okay, so adding on strength training, and would you say like just make half your plates vegetables and cut out all of the packaged food?
Yeah. Okay. So if you want to make it super simple,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I would even not even mention the strength training. You can do that later, right?
Right.
Because again, you might go into that stress mode of like strength training,
Right,
depending on the
right.
personality. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's put that off the table. Exactly. You look at your plate, half of your plate, the majority of your plate, really, because it could be half your plate plus a side salad, right? So
Right.
the majority of what you're eating is vegetables of all different types, right? And then you have a palm of protein, and potentially a palm of healthy complex carbs. So we're talking sweet potato or lentils or chickpeas or something that is, and if you can eat those last, then all the better, right? So you eat your salad first, your vegetables, your protein, and then your complex carbs last. And then you can eat fruit as well. But again, you want to eat the fruit at the end of your meal and never between meals so that the blood sugar response is slowed down. Yeah. But
Okay,
you don't want to
so
cut them out because they're very healthy. Yeah.
that's simple enough. So we shouldn't eat. You don't recommend eating fruits empty stomach.
So it's kind of individual thing, right? Like because our blood sugar responses is like it's like it varies across the board. Like my response to it might be totally different than yours. So experiment with it. What I've noticed that for a lot of people, eating a fruit between the meals will spike blood sugar. The people who wear
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
CGM, like we have seen that. And so versus like the same orange that you eat after the meal versus in between meal will have a different impact. But something to experiment with, or if you're going to go do a workout, you're going to be using that energy right away, right? So then that won't be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really true that everyone's different because I usually for me around 3-4 p.m. I want a snack. Like, it's kind of like the work day is almost over and it's not necessarily hunger, it's just boredom or like, I
Mm-hmm.
want something. And then so at some point I switched from chocolate to fruits.
Mm-hmm.
And I notice especially citrus, orange, when I eat an orange, I need to nap like about 15-20 minutes and it's like I got to pass out right now. So I stopped eating oranges and I switched to more like apples or berries or pears. Like those are okay, but I noticed that there's certain fruits where I get sleepy very shortly after.
Yeah, meaning it's spiking your blood sugar. That's
Yeah.
typical response, right? A spike and then you get tired. And so, but even if you were to have it with like coconut cream or
Mm,
yogurt, something fatty, something
something
a
to
little
buffer
bit
it.
yeah, like a Greek yogurt or something. Yeah. It would probably help to slow it down versus having just the orange juice. Like that would probably be
Perfect.
that would probably really, really spike you because it's really just pulling out the sugars and leaving out the fibers, right?
Yeah, my rule is I don't drink my calories. And if there's sugar, I'm gonna eat it in a cake, in a
Mm-hmm.
pastry that's really worth it. And I'll have it
Mm-hmm.
maybe once or twice a week. but never drink it because it's too fast. I mean, it goes down in like 2 seconds. I barely have a time to enjoy it.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So for someone who has, let's say, joint pain, body
Mhm,
pains, what are some simple shifts they can try out?
mhm. Yeah, so with joint pain, body pain, if it's not an injury, right? So it could be an injury, but if it's usually inflammation, really. And what inflammation is just like, when you have a bruise on the outside of your hands or a cut, it gets all red and really kind of painful. And that inflammation, that's what's happening, but on the inside. And there are a lot of reasons that people can have inflammation. So one is food. Some foods are inflammatory for sure, like the processed food, the seed oils, the sugars, all those are inflammatory on your body. So already cutting those out, like we just said, that might actually be enough. Just cut out the processed and the sugar and sort of kind of pay attention. That could be enough just in itself. If it's still not enough and you still have it, then you might actually be sensitive to having an intolerance for certain foods. And the only way really to know that would be to eliminate some of the things. And the most common ones are, gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, like those are the big ones. But just eliminating, there's in functional medicine, there's a special diet called the elimination diet that we do. And so you eliminate for I believe it's at least 3 weeks, but probably we're recommending around 4. So to eliminate the reaction, and then you reintroduce, then one at a time. So one new food every 2, 3 days, because it's not like an allergy where you have the symptom right away. It could be like
Mm.
the next day feel sluggish or brain fog or your joints or something like that. So that's really another area that you can look at, but you don't have to assume it's that, right off the get-go. Like you can just implement just reducing inflammation in general. And this other, okay, I'll tell you about this other way, which is super easy, which is free and accessible, is walking outside barefoot.
Ah,
Yeah, like walking outside barefoot is a really very anti-inflammatory because when you have inflammation, you create these free radicals in your body that are actually positively charged, and when you're walking outside, it's negatively charged, and so like by being grounded. It also leaves your body, and there's a lot of new research around, for example, heart health, heart inflammation, um, autoimmune diseases, and all that, where they're actually seeing that grounding, earthing is having an impact. And that's so easy to do, right? And so it means being on a surface that conducts electricity, right? So
so being on soil, on top of earth, not asphalt.
soil, well, it can be no asphalt, it can be concrete, right?
Oh, it can be
It
concrete.
can be, yeah, if it's just like not sealed concrete,
Okay,
but if it's concrete, soil, grass, all those are
okay.
great. If it's moist, it's even better, right? Because it conducts electricity better. And you don't have to do it all day, just for a few minutes. But you know what? Going outside within the first half hour when you wake up anyway, to
Mhm.
actually expose yourself to the natural light is already going to set up your circadian rhythm for the whole day, as we talked about, right? That's going to signal, okay, time to raise cortisol. It's a beautiful practice anyway to do, and it'll help with inflammation. Yeah, particularly nerve inflammation as well. Yeah.
Okay. And speaking of inflammation, where would you categorize red meat? Is it
Hmm.
inflammatory?
That's a really good question. I think that's a huge debate that I don't
Yeah.
necessarily want to get into. And again, I would say that is going to be individual. I think that's going to be individual. Like, I don't think we can blanket say red meat is inflammatory or not. In terms of the diet plans or the food plans that I work with, we don't eliminate red meat. It's a healthy protein. We do go towards more grass-fed, organic red meat because what can be inflammatory is the farms, the red
Mm,
meat and the antibiotics that they put in and the chemicals, etc. That's super inflammatory, right? And if they're fed with grain, that's a lot of omega-6, and that's inflammatory if you're not compensating with the good omegas, the omega-3, they're all good, the omegas, but if you're not compensating, it's the ratio that matters. In general, having organic or grass-fed beef, red meats is going to be way better and less
okay.
inflammatory. Yeah.
All right. For a woman who is often tired, no energy,
Mm.
where can they start?
So tired, low energy. So I think we talked about this a little bit. One place to look is, is my blood sugar spiking during the day? Like, am I eating? Am I tired? Okay, again, getting a little bit more mindful of, okay, when is this happening? Do I wake? Because it's very different to wake up tired, like to
Mhm.
really drag yourself out of bed, or to have a crash later, in the afternoon, or feel tired before you go to bed. If you wake up tired, usually what happens, is because your cortisol is supposed to rise slowly in the morning. You actually might not have enough cortisol. And that usually happens when you've been really stressed and high strung for a few years. That's
Okay.
burnout. That's literally burnout. Like, your adrenals are not producing enough cortisol. And so if you're really dragging yourself out of bed in the morning, unless you have severe insomnia and you have like a real reason for it, but a lot of the times it's like, I slept, I don't understand. That could be because of just being burned out. And so restoring your adrenals is really going to be helpful, and reducing anything that makes your cortisol spike. And that
Hmm.
could mean heavy exercise as
Hmm.
well. It could mean your cold plunges for a while, or it could mean anything that the science bros tell us to do.
Yeah.
The biohacking stuff.
Yeah.
It's great, but we gotta, have to take it with a grain of salt, because if we're going at it with that push, push, push attitude that you were talking about, oh, I'm gonna get healthy and I'm gonna do it all, and I'm
Right.
gonna, it's not productive. It's not productive. Yeah. And then the afternoon crashes we talked about, if you're really tired in the afternoon, in terms
That's
of, it could be
blood sugar.
cortisol, or
Yeah.
it could be that, the blood sugar. And then, I'd say in the evening, if you're tired, that's probably just more sleep related, right? Because that's
What would you say to brain fog?
brain fog. Same thing. It's like these sounds like different symptoms.
Right. Right.
They sound like different symptoms, like bloating, brain fog, tired, low energy, weight gain, whatever. Actually, they're all part of that same metabolic sort of health, nervous system regulation, thing. And so they all kind of appear when you're dysregulated and disappear when you're regulated. And so with brain fog, again, blood sugar regulation. Like, I don't know if you remember when you ate that orange, you were tired, or you probably had a ton of brain fog too. You're just kind of like, like, I can't think anymore, right? Um, Inflammation is going to give you brain fog. There's certain hormonal changes to do with the decrease in estrogen, or the variations in estrogen that we have at this age, that can also promote that. So again, what can you do? That super nutrient rich plate, half the vegetables, eating the healthy carbs, putting them at the end, and regulating your nervous system by following your rhythm, by not pushing yourself too hard, all the things we talked about.
So it sounds like all of those hundreds of possible symptoms that we can experience in perimenopause and menopause, they all really come down to inflammation, stress, and blood sugar stability.
Yeah, and
And
hormonal change.
hormonal, of course,
Yeah,
yeah.
that are actually happening. But it's not a fatality. Like, it's not because there's plenty of women who don't have symptoms. Right. So you're like, wait, hold on. I thought those were like happen to everyone because we have hormonal changes. I was like, no, it kind of depends how you show up, right? And so if you show up depleted, you show up stressed, you show up dysregulated, you have insulin resistance, inflammation, all those things, you're gonna have even more symptoms. But we also have to be careful, because yes, a lot of this is menopause related, but sometimes you really have a thyroid issue,
Right.
or sometimes you really have, and you also I think now there's a lot of talk about menopause and menopause symptoms, and that's awesome. But let's not attribute everything to it either, right? Because you do have to still make sure that you're treating, or you're doing the lifestyle things to actually look at, your health as well, right? Yeah.
Now let's talk about mindset. You emphasize mindset as the real key to lasting change. What's that kind of mindset?
Well, yeah, mindset is everything, really, because how really, change your minds, change your life. So one of the things for life, as we're talking about behavior change, is that a lot of times when we go into a lifestyle program, a behavior change, we're like, oh, I'm going to do some, some hacks, some habit hacks, habit stacking. Oh, I did this. I'm going to watch my favorite show while I'm on the treadmill or something. And it worked great. It's awesome, right? And there's definitely a place for those, kind of like the habit formula and all those things. However, understanding what's actually driving our behavior in the first place is going to be that more lasting change. Because at some point you're going to run out of willpower. You're going to run out. And at some point you're going to be like, I just don't feel like going to the gym. Like I just really don't want to do it, or I really don't want to eat healthy. And it's because we have those, sometimes we have like one foot on the brake, one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake, right? And so the accelerator is like our conscious mind, what we want to do, our desires, what's calling us forward. But there's that foot on the brake. And that's what I would say mindset is around, is really looking at. It's kind of a general term to look at what is that foot on the brake, because it could be some subconscious beliefs that you have, or that are kind of limiting you, that you have since childhood, which could be, no matter what I do, I can, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's a mindset, but that's also a belief,
Mhm.
because when you examine it, is it true? Is it
Mhm.
really true that no matter what you do, it never works? And when you only pause to question, you're like, well, no, actually, no, that's not always true,
Mhm.
and so you kind of build the case for the opposite. And so just kind of working on those beliefs can be really, really powerful, because otherwise they're going to be holding you back. Like, you're going to be holding you back. You want to go forwards, but there's a part of you that's always holding you back. Sometimes that foot on the brake can be more, a little bit deeper, more emotional, more somatic memory, or, like your body's memorized that it doesn't really feel good to put yourself out there to hope, or, and that can be more somatic and feeling. So it's less mindset per se, but it's all around really looking at what's driving the behavior.
Right. Right. I can really relate to that. For a long time, I needed this chocolate at like 4 p.m., 3, 4 p.m. And I also did all this hack of like, okay, now I gotta, really tighten this up and stop the chocolate. So, I would change all the chocolate to like 85% because I can't binge eat 85% chocolate. And that went on for a while and it kind of worked, just forcing your habit to change through either not buying that food or just stopping that habit. But then, like the sweeter chocolates came back, whether it's holiday, throw that off, so I started eating those Lindt balls, super addictive. Um, and then at some point I noticed I would start with like, let's say 1 square, back to the dark chocolate. I'd start with 1 square. And then a week later, it would be 2 squares a day. And then I found myself eating half a bar of chocolate a day. And I'm like, okay, whoa, like what is happening? It would be 4 squares in a row. It's not even spread out over the day. It was just like one is not enough. I gotta get four in a row. And then when I really sat down and investigated it, it was when I was really bored at work, or if I really pushed through the workday, or I didn't enjoy the work. The more I worked, the more chocolate I needed to sustain this way of being. Because when I wasn't working, I didn't eat chocolate. I didn't even think about chocolate. But the working plus 4 p.m., it's like that's a trigger. 4 p.m. is here. It's like I've been working all day. I freaking deserve this. And so I would just, rip the chocolate. So it's interesting to then, notice, okay, it's really when I'm pushing myself too much, or I'm doing something, or I've been bored all day, I'm looking for pleasure. And so I'm not eating, I don't know, a piece of, an apple. Like it's got to be chocolate. It's got to be chocolate melting in my mouth. Like that's actually what I'm looking for, because that is pleasure. That it's like instant pleasure. And one piece isn't enough. I kind of want the pleasure to last, 4 pieces long, which is maybe
Mm-hmm.
2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that you slowed it down enough to say, hold on, what second, like 1 second, rather than looking at the behavior and just kind of, and saying, oh, you're bad, it's bad. Like what I'm doing, this is wrong or whatever. Instead of judging it, you you look at it with curiosity. You're like, oh, what's going on? Like what was actually going on when I had that chocolate? And you noticed you needed a circuit breaker. It sounds like you needed some moment of like, yeah.
I
And
needed more
so
fun and pleasure in life, and for me, food, when
mhm.
you don't have enough time for fun and pleasure, well, food is the easiest thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I think a lot of us reach for food when we're bored, not because we're necessarily hungry.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be physical hunger. Very often it's emotional hunger, a need for connection, a need for intellectual stimulation. Or I find I'll reach for chocolate in the afternoon if it's like I'm hitting on something that's a little hard, like a hard task. And I'm like, "Ugh, I don't really know how to send the email, what to say, you know, and a fear of conflict or something like that, something, yeah, there's something that we're avoiding and then we're turning towards the behavior, or it's something we're craving, like rest,
Right.
like connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then it's like, okay, well, Gary, the chocolate's doing this for me. Potentially it's doing an okay job. It's giving me some pleasure. It's giving me some rest, but it's like, okay, but it's eating chocolate, is that aligned, with like, where I consciously want to go, and it can be, and that's fine. Or it's like, no, it's too much. Like when you get to that, 4 bars, right? And so it's like, okay, what's a more direct way to get that break that I need, or to get that connection, or to get that fun, or to get that feeling supported that I can give myself directly. So I don't need to use the chocolate for it, because at the end of the day, it's really interesting when you slow it down on this and you slow it down, you look for me that maybe it might be nuts or almonds or, things like that. And then I just at the bag and I'm like, you're just almonds. Like, you can't give me what I want.
Right.
You don't got it. You're just almonds, right? And then you eat them, and at the end of the day, it's very short term because you feel kind of more empty after, because what you were looking for, your unmet need hasn't actually been met, unless it's hunger
Right.
or magnesium, or, like it happens, of course, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's a piece of wisdom you can give to someone in their late 30s or early 40s that's about to go into this perimenopause journey? Maybe something that you wish you knew or did back then.
Hmm. Yeah, listen to your body. Like, listen to the body. Don't push through, and don't avoid the whole line of thinking like something must be wrong with me. I'm broken. It's not working anymore. Just because it worked before and it doesn't work now, it doesn't mean you're broken. And yeah, and really yeah, just meeting it more with curiosity versus judgment, and starting, and the faster you listen to your body and what it's saying, like, really, because it's the whispers that you get at that age, they become, the shouts later, right? Like, I was talking about burnout. Like, a lot of women I tend to work with women who are sort of on the other end of that spectrum, that are more in their maybe late 40s, early 50s, and for a lot of them, they didn't listen in their 30s and 40s, and they continued. And yeah, you can still, you can override still. I mean, the cost becomes higher and higher and higher and higher, for sure. And I can tell you, every single woman I speak to usually has had a reckoning moment. And that
Um,
reckoning moment could be the doctor telling them, something's off, cholesterol, blood sugar, or it can be anxiety or depression or just crashing, or just this like really moment of, okay, I can't do this anymore, like I can't run this program anymore, something needs to change. You don't need to wait until that point. You don't need to wait till that breaking point. If you tune in and listen to the whispers before, and yeah, and becoming much more in tune, which is, I love what your approach, right? Which is really around talking about it earlier, listening earlier, making these changes earlier so that it doesn't come as a crash later.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So start listening and not wait until your hormones are gonna force you to
Yeah.
have to listen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Would you say that because I hear a lot of women, more in the later perimenopause or menopause stages where that, they wake up one day and they don't recognize themselves. They don't know how they got here. It sounds like a lot of that has to do with this pushing through of not listening and not being very well connected and just yeah, it's just listening to what's happening and the first changes that starts happening. And I think maybe also like now we're talking more about perimenopause, there's more discussions around it, but I think a lot of the women who are in their late perimenopause now, um, back when they were starting, there wasn't that much talk around this. So there's not even an awareness that what I'm feeling right now might be. perimenopause, the early signs of perimenopause.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. And it's like, you know, looking in the mirror and you're like, I don't recognize myself. Like I don't recognize myself physically. I don't even know who I am. I feel feeling really, I mean, we talked about a lot of the symptoms that come up, and it could be like sleep issues and sweats and crashes and all that. But I think in general, it's this feeling of I don't feel like myself anymore. And to get to that point, and so it's all that's why, going back to that initiation, it's like feeling, going back to what does my body need, but what do I need? And what do I want? Because I can tell you a lot of us, and we get to 50, we're so disconnected from what do I want and what do I need. We've spent so long in our caregiver roles, right? Whether it's with our kids or partners, work, etc. And that's actually hormonally supported because the estrogen we produce during those years is very nurturing. And so it really allows us to really make those, those sort of self-sacrifices and all. And we do, we do, we're happy to do it, etc. But we get to a point where, first of all, physically we can't do it anymore, and but of this point of disconnection of not like not even knowing what it is that we want. Like I will tell you, Wendy, I went to a few years ago. I took a few days off on my own with my dog 4 years ago when I was starting to really feel the crash. And I was like, there was like a little grocery shop, and I looked at the fruits, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy some fruits. I was like, what fruits do I like? Like I had no idea.
Oh.
I didn't know. I didn't even buy the apples I have 3 kids, apples, the oranges, the whatever, and then, I must have looked really strange because I literally picked up every single fruit and observed it, and then it was like, "This looks good."
Yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, I didn't even know. Yeah, it's
Wow. Yeah.
mhm.
I think a lot of women can relate to that. I remember that happened to me in my mid-30s when I suddenly realized I never asked myself what I wanted to do in life. It was like that was not a choice, you were told you have to be a doctor or an engineer, and, like, those are the respectable jobs, and that's how you make money, and, like, you're not gonna be a starving artist, right? So, immediately, there's a whole set of things that I would've maybe been interested in. It's, like, impossible, like, not even gonna think about that. So, there was never a question of what I enjoyed, and I remember I used to love coloring books as a kid. And I remember the moment, I think it was school, the moment school started, I stopped coloring because now I have to do homework. And so in my mid-30s, I was like, I used to love coloring. I think 35 was when I got my first coloring book again. You know what? I don't know really what I want to do, but I used to love coloring. So let's start there and then we'll see. And I think that's where it kickstarted my whole journey of like trying to figure out what do I like? What do I wanna do in life outside of what I'm supposed to be doing? And I actually took 4 months off. I remember I took 4 months off, and my parents were worried. It's like, "What do you mean you're, like, gonna stop working?" I'm like, "I gotta I have to think about this. I gotta figure out who I am," because, yeah, like, I think there's a lot of us, we never really asked ourselves that question, and especially if you go into a mom role, now it's not about your needs anymore, it's everyone else's needs, and then that's where you find yourself, once your kids are grown up, it's like, "Okay, who am I? Like, who am I now?"
Yeah, and right, and for a lot of people, that does come when the kids leave, because then it's like
Yeah.
that is the crashing point. And that's the crashing point. Who am I? Yeah, and I love that, the coloring is like you can start anywhere. You can start anywhere. Yeah. Buy the fruits you like. Buy the
Right.
color. For me it was dance. It was like, I always loved dancing when I was like, oh, when do I feel free and what, really uplifted. And so I discovered a dance practice called Five Rhythms, and I absolutely love it. And that's been kind of my entryway into, oh, this is what it feels like to feel like me, really, right? And then starting to notice, oh, well, actually, when I'm in this situation or having this kind of conversation, I don't I don't really feel like me anymore, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then starting time to work at it. And for me, it's meant a complete shift in career because I was in business before, and now, I'm coaching. It doesn't always have to look like that. It doesn't have to look like it doesn't mean, oh, if I do what I want, I have to like break up my whole life and change careers. No, it doesn't mean that. You can lead, you can stay in your organization or in your job, but you're coming at it in this much more like grounded, authentic way, you know? And I'm very passionate about helping women reconnect with their bodies first, as we talked about, because that's quite easy and fast. That is not as hard as it sounds or is it meant to be. To allow a doorway to reconnect really with what themselves and what they want, and then become, leading then from this wholeness versus from this like depletion and this trying to fit in and this trying to like make yourself be the person they want you to be and all that. You're not going to be a great leader like that. And you're not going to really have fun at work, versus like really bringing all of you at work. And which is also really great. That's great. We are talking about menopause because, we hit our periods, we hit our pregnancies, we hit our tears. Like, for a lot of us who've evolved in this, more masculine energy oriented business world, none of that was really taken into account. We really adapted. And when we can't do it anymore, what makes me sad to hear, it's like, oh, well, there must be something wrong with me. I can't do this anymore. It's like, well, you've been actually trying to fit into the system that hasn't adapted for your physiology, your emotions, etc. But this is our chance. Like, this is our chance to really bring all of ourselves to it, and then pave the way for the younger women who won't, and for the younger men too, because it's not only about masculine and feminine. It's like a lot of men would also benefit and appreciate being able to be a dad and bringing all of themselves at work and not just the sort of productivity machine, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Juliette, thank you for coming on my podcast. Where can listeners connect with you and learn more about the Meta Reset?
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. The best way is probably just to go to my website, which is www.awaken.health, and all the information is on there. And then, of course, I'm on social media, at Awaken Health Coach, different places, or just send me an email, Juliette@awaken.health. I'm always happy to connect with people.
Sounds great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and I hope you keep owning your becoming. And thank you, Juliette, for giving us all these tips. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this episode was helpful, and if you enjoyed it, please share it with someone. I think perimenopause is not just something to talk about once we're in it, but we should know what we're walking into and start this conversation earlier. The earlier you know about this, the more power you have. If you want to be notified of new episodes or updates on my projects, sign up on ownyourbecoming.com, and you can also grab a free meal plan. Until next time, stay wise, stay wild, and keep owning your becoming.